and welcome to The Hill is Always Greener, a show where four friends, and guests sometimes, have chill discussions about Sonic the Hedgehog to distract themselves from the inevitable passage of time and their own rapidly waning ability to relate to the youth, and to celebrate fictional characters' birthdays. Hi, I'm GameBuddy.
I'm Faulerro.
I'm RockTheJake.
And unfortunately, Metal Sonic blasted Luke's equipment with his stupid tummy laser, so he is our silent producer once again for this episode. But today we have a special guest, introducing Jez.
Hiya. I'm JezMM. I've been a Sonic fan ever since Master System 2 appeared in my house around 1994 or so. Kind of drifted away during the Nintendo 64 years and got hooked back in after seeing City Escape for the first time on the GameCube.
Nice.
My main credentials within the fan base is that I know most of these guys.
Yes.
I've listened to every episode of the podcast so far, and I've got to say I'm loving this 4D thing you've got going on for this episode. It is like I'm right here with you guys.
Oh my goodness. Yes, Jez is a dear old friend from, oh my goodness, the Sonic fan site forum days, and
yeah,
wow,
right.
It's, you know, when I say it out loud, it really feels like we are comrades in arms.
Like decades, literally. Like.
Oh boy, oh, I love it. It's why I love this show. Woo. Well, today, I mean, and that goes hand in hand, inviting old friends to talk about Sonic today, because this is our kind of, loosey-goosey celebration of Sonic the Hedgehog's 33rd birthday.
Where are we at? 32, yeah, because we did 32 for the 32nd year. Anyway,
yes, because let's see, I'm 34. Oh, Jesus.
I was about to say.
Well, Sonic and I are the same age, so there you go. 33.
There you go. Okay, yes.
Although, actually, I'll be 33 later this year. Well, 33... No, yeah, 33, like a week or so after this episode comes out.
I think you'll find Sonic is eternally 16
not anymore.
Actually, he doesn't have a canonical age anymore.
They are using the Time Eater powers to rewrite the universe, and sure, whatever, who cares? But yes, in celebration of Sonic's birthday, we are going back, all the way back to Sonic's very first appearance. That's right, we are talking about the arcade game Rad Mobile. No, we are, of course, talking about Sonic's original outing on the Mega Drive and Genesis, Sonic the Hedgehog, known, these days colloquially as Sonic 1.
I mean, that's not true. Everyone knows it's called Sonic 91 because you got to differentiate with the true Sonic 1, which is Sonic 06.
Yeah, that's the one I played. Is that going to be an issue?
Yeah, we're pulling the ripcord and finally doing a 6-hour recording on Sonic 06. Sorry, that's what you're in for today. No, of course not.
You know what? Pardon me. I have to go jump off my roof.
Well, no. Okay. Almost got a little too dark there. Yeah. People will never know what I cut out of this show. Also not, as Luke says, also not that Sonic 1 port that came out in 2006, the Game Boy Advance. We will pay lip service to that one later. But yeah, I feel like we have talked a lot about Sonic's original game, mostly about what led up to that. Like we touched on the Bibles that the game never actually used, but also some of that concept art, some new pieces that just recently got shared in full resolution by Naoto Oshima, with the original concepts for Sonic and all those funny nightmare looking villains, and Sonic's girlfriend Madonna. Everybody knows about her, right?
I mean, if they've been listening to our podcast up till now, they probably do. We keep bringing her up.
That's the one that fell in love with Weird Al, right?
Yeah, officially, canonically.
Sonic didn't have a chance there.
I think we might have even brought that up the last time we talked about it.
We did, yeah.
Well, we just have the same jokes every time.
Like Sonic himself, sometimes we just loop-de-loop back around to our best bits.
Yeah, we just recycle old assets for future games and episodes. And
As you like to say, it's poetry.
so anyway, Sonic 1.
I did want to say, you put this in our outline for us, and I actually, for the first time, listened to it. But since we have two Brits on here, I had never experienced the PAL version of Sonic 1, and the quick and dirty version is that it's not so much an issue now with like HD TVs and whatnot, but back in the analog days, like you had different refresh rate standards on TVs, and NTSC, which was just for the sake of brevity, like the North American standard, was 60 hertz, and the PAL version, which was across the pond, was 50 hertz. And so the Sonic 1 music sounds different to y'all, huh?
Yeah. I mean, like the original version of the game. It's a bit slower.
I remember when I first played it on Mega Collection, I didn't really notice the difference unless I had two TVs in my house, so depending on which one I was playing on, I would either have to use 60 hertz or 50 hertz, and I would just be like, why is the music so slow today? Why is the game glitchier? And have no idea, like, I didn't even notice what the difference there was. But
that's just kind of how it is. Like, as you get older, time passes differently for you. So you're like, oh man, it's just going by too quickly these days, and Sonic is the same way.
I understand what you mean. There are part of why I tried to hook up the Genesis I have, only to find that there's some cable or hookup that's gone dead, so I couldn't do that, was to like play through that original version, because we touched on a little bit of it when we talked about all the compilations, but there are little quirks about Sonic 1 that only are in that original version. Gosh, I don't know all the details, but like the Sonic 1 spikes I thought were pretty famous for
famous is the word.
Infamous. That's what we're looking for killing you instantly if you hit them just right, just from the hitboxes. And I think that gets removed in just about every other re-release.
That's one of the funny things about the 60 versus 50 hertz version on Mega Collection. I might be wrong, but I remember that spike glitch happened in the 50 hertz version of the game, but not in the 60 hertz one on Mega Collection. And again, I thought I was losing my mind whenever I was playing that 50 hertz version, and the spikes would kill me instantly. I might be wrong, but
that's interesting. The unintentional gaslighting by Sega. At one point, they're just going to be like, "Oh no, the spin dash was always in Sonic 1. You're crazy."
I mean, I was playing a little bit of Sonic 1, at least the emulated version on Sega Classics Collection, which you probably can't get now, thanks Sega. But I still have. And yeah, like, you miss that spin dash. Like, the moment that came in Sonic 2, like, how you play the game changed forever. Now you're just having to, you're having to move backwards and roll to break through walls. Feels wrong, man.
I was going to say, I played the Sonic Origins version in preparation to join you guys today. And I was planning to not use the spin dash. I was going to have the purest experience. And then I hit that first wall that you can spin dash through in Green Hill and was like, actually, I really can't be bothered, and immediately used the spin dash.
I had a very similar experience where I played some alternate versions, and we're going to go through some of those in a little bit, but ended up settling on the Origins version for my full playthrough. And I did the level select, got to the secret options, and it was like, oh yeah, I could turn on the speed and the jump cap just like the original game. I could turn off the spin dash, can make sure the Chaos Emeralds are just 6 like the original release. And then I said, but what if I didn't and just
what if I chose to have fun today?
Yes. Which not that it would be impossible. It's just, it is so obvious that they if they could have put the spin dash in that original game, they would have.
in preparation for today's episode, I also I did play the Sonic Origins version, and then in the past couple days, I played the version of Sonic 1 on the Sonic and Sega Ultimate Collection on PS3.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, which for me, that's probably the closest that I could get to playing like the original Sonic 1, because in recollection, I don't think I've ever actually played Sonic 1 on a Genesis, because I never had a Genesis growing up.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, so that's probably the closest for me. I had a fun moment yesterday where I booted it up and I started playing, and like right when the Green Hill theme started playing, I like something hit me in my heart. I'm just like, oh, it feels like Christmas or something like that. You play the game on Christmas when you first get it or something like that, and then you get to Marble Zone and you're just like, oh, well, the feeling's gone.
Back to work. Christmas is over.
Yep.
Well, you see, that's your first mistake. It's actually on South Island, not Christmas Island. That's which is God. Sorry, don't know why I did that.
Another dubiously canon detail of Sonic's origin. Oh boy. Well, speaking of zones, I bet y'all want to jump straight in and talk about the different parts of Sonic 1 here.
Let's hop into the game. Let's put the cartridge into the machine. Take it out again, blow into it, put it back in. Haha, that's relatable, isn't it? 90s kids.
Okay, hold on. Let me... okay, hold on.
And now see...
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
It's everywhere.
Yeah, been a while, huh? But when you're first starting up the game, like, it is worth noting... This is not the first time we hear it, but this is like the first time I heard the famous Sega chant. That was put into the game when they removed the sound test with the little Sonic's little rock band that was going to make it into the game, until Madeline Schroeder was like, no band, no fangs, no booby woman.
Not to date our recording, but very lovely to see that concept referenced in an official Tails Tube social media video of Sonic in a band with a rabbit and a crocodile. And it was very cute. It was like, oh, they know.
I think I've mentioned it on the podcast before, but whenever I played the older Sonic games, like on the Mega Collection, and like if my parents were around and they heard that Sega chant, there's a few times where they say, "Are they saying Jacob?" Because that's my name.
Every copy is personalized.
No, you beat me to
Yes. Oh goodness.
So obviously it's Sega, but from a distance it sounds like Jacob.
Yep. Like they would call you in for dinner.
It's like if you get to put in your own, this game is great, and I just put in my name. Welcome, Thrill Ho. That's a reference for you all out there who are old like us.
Bunny Bonestormer, go to hell!
The funny thing is, I feel like the Sega led to the misunderstanding that it's supposed to be pronounced. Well, actually, no, it's not a misunderstanding. I think it is Sega. Sega. Like, for me specifically, as a British person, it's Sega. But, like, I'll hear all the American adverts that are like, Sega.
Yeah, I mean, now I'm self-conscious. I don't know how I'm going to have to listen to my own voice that is recording. I feel like as Luke points out, I feel like that misunderstanding comes from the woefully inferior follow-up to the Sega jingle is the guy on Saturn who would just scream it. In fact, I had a Sonic plushie, a classic Sonic plushie from, the Babbages in my mall that said that, Sega! Except you couldn't open him up, so you could never replace the batteries, so I just had to listen to him slowly die, and I mean, yeah, y'all can imagine what that sounds like. But yeah, horrifying to where it doesn't sound like a word at all.
I was going to say, when I first played Sonic 3D on Mega Collection, I don't know, did we have the Sega advertising over here in the UK? Chris, do you know?
I'm gonna have to. I don't think we had the yelling. I don't think we had the Sega.
Yeah, I was
that was a bit alarming for me too.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I was like, "Hey, are the choir okay today?" Like,
they're in a hurry. They got to get out of here.
Just one guy left, and he's not doing well mentally.
Well, who would be if you were stuck in a Sonic 3D cartridge? No, it wasn't that bad.
Nah, we revisited that one not too long ago, and it was pretty okay, especially that director's cut version if you can get a hold of it. That Sega chant sure is lovely. Like, I even like it when other games don't even have the whole thing but acknowledge it. I think it's the Sonic Spinball opening just has the little notes, but you're still in your head, you're like, oh yeah,
Sega.
Instrumental
Sonic
edit.
CD too, the original version too. Like,
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And then, like, whenever there's a Sonic film and they do the Sega movies thing, you can hear the little doo-doo in orchestrated.
Oh, yes. And I
mean, how else would you start the movie? Come on.
Yes.
No, seriously.
I mean, I think I've said it before, but that new Sega, like, it's almost like a Sega Ages, like, intro screen. But, Sonic's up there, but I always point and go, oh, Kiryu.
Like Yakuza 0 Kiryu specifically showing up on a cinema screen.
Yeah, it's 4 feet high on the movie screen.
And that's probably, is it Kiwami? My mistake, Luke. But, that's probably the only way we should see Kiryu on the big screen, to be honest.
I think we have gone over the, like, how did Sonic feel back then as we dipped into, like, the different versions and were the spikes always like that? So Green Hill Zone, the grand Mac Daddy of all Sonic zones that always seems to worm its way. Worm its way is negative. I would say
grow its way because it's grass.
Come back to visit like an old friend. That's a nice way to put it.
Yeah, that's how we put it.
days.
The rest of the Sonic fandom are like, oh god, it's that guy again.
Well, I mean, we have hashed this out. It's like Mario gets to, like, reference 1-1 all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So why shouldn't Sonic get to do Green Hill?
To be honest, like, it felt like something that was gone for a while. Like, not to get too far into it now, but, like, after it showed up again in Sonic Adventure 2 after this, and then it was gone for a long time, I feel like.
Yeah, and even then, like, I don't know about anybody else, I never managed to unlock Green Hill properly as a child in Sonic Adventure 2, so...
Me neither.
I
Still haven't.
Screenshots in game magazines even then for a long time.
The funny thing is, I did manage to unlock it, and at the time, that was like the driving force that was like getting me through those Chow races. I was like, no, I get to play Green Hill in 3D if I do this. And I hadn't seen it in any screenshots. We didn't have YouTube back then, so I was just hanging on to, like, I will get to see this Green Hill Zone in 3D. That's never going to happen in another Sonic game ever again. I have to unlock this. And it was worth all the hours. I did need a guide to get all those A ranks down, but at the time that was something very special at the time.
Yeah.
Just a few years ago when I modded up my Dreamcast and hooked it up to my modern television, that was one of the things I did was finally unlock that properly, and it is very fun, especially if you have played Adventure 2 so much that you can make those characters just do ice dancing perfect movement combos. I don't know if it holds up, like if you gave it to somebody who was not a Adventure 2 quote-unquote expert, but it is a nice novelty.
I think there's a reason the Generation 3D version is like, the roller coaster style, because that there's a lot, it's a lot to take in the Sonic Adventure 2 version.
It was a good experiment, I'm sure, for Sonic Team at the time to be like, oh, let's do some traditional Sonic level platforming in 3D. But yes, it's nice. The original Green Hill Zone, well, I feel like, especially going through it several times by booting up different versions of this game, it really does feel like the perfect onboarding for what Sonic is as a game compared to, like, other games at the time. Like, if you just want to say, like, compared to Mario, like, Green Hill does a great job of showing, like, this ain't your daddy's Mario Brothers game.
Which was the intention at the time. They were playing, like the creators were playing World 1-1 over and over again. Like, I want to do it, I'm not doing it faster every time, but what if we made one where you're supposed to go fast? Which would lead to many misunderstandings over what Sonic is supposed to be over the years, but anyway.
Yes, I even think, we've talked about the spin dash. I do think the few U-dips that are in, and the loop-de-loops in Green Hill if you just wipe out the fact that, and that's a lot of this game, I think will keep coming up. If you just pretend that Sonic 2 does not exist yet, that you are back in 1991, I do think those bits in Green Hill Zone do a great job teaching you, like, oh, okay, you got to build up that momentum. I'm going to have to backtrack a little bit and build up some speed and not just, sit there and do your spin dash or your drop dash or your super peel out, etc., etc. It does a good job, like getting you getting you on board with this new guy, this Sonic. Oh, he's different.
This is definitely like the beginning of like the whole misunderstand. Like, I was joking about the misunderstanding of Sonic, but a lot of people see this and are like, "Oh yeah, you just hold right to win," because like the first act is pretty much like that in a way. I mean, there are a few little level gimmicks and things that you can do, but it is a lot of like pushing forward. But if you try holding right to win throughout all of Green Hill, you will die.
Yes, those traps are there, those badniks are there, and gosh, maybe I just haven't done the other for Sonic 2 in a while. The are they called Buzz Bombers in Sonic 1?
Yeah.
I want to get my terminology right. The Buzz Bombers in Sonic 1 seem incredibly aggressive. Not just in Green Hill, but they show up in other zones. And yeah, it is not recommended to just try to plow through, especially this original Sonic game. I feel like the nuance that has been lost in the original Sonic 2D platformers is that you are building up your knowledge of the level layouts, so when you come back to it, and again, these games are not very long, like games were were not intended to be long back then. You could get better and better. And like there are challenges built into the game to do that, like the gaining access to the special stages in Sonic 1 is collecting and keeping 50 rings and making it safely to the goalpost to be able to go into those special zones. And so that takes skill. That takes finding the secret passageways and making it, especially in Green Hill, to the upper pathways that are much trickier and involve a lot of platforming.
I mean, slightly getting ahead of ourselves here, but considering that most people tend to say that, oh yeah, I played Sonic as a kid, I always died on the lava level, I think it says something to how Green Hill managed to get that level of challenge exactly right, that most people could beat it, but it still, like, taught you everything that you needed to know.
Speaking of those special stages, what, especially looking back on them now with hindsight of other special stages, what is the takeaway from these?
Well, I'll let you guys go first, because I feel like I'm going to be the contrary opinion here, but you guys go.
I mean, I replayed one of them at least right before the episode, and I got maybe it's because I played it so many times. So that first one I can get done pretty fast. You just have to. It's sort of something you learn. But they are disorienting, to say the least. You're stuck in ball form the whole time and bouncing around these spinning surreal levels with the birds and the fish in the background. And yeah, I can see why this would be a bit upsetting to people. Actually, like, oh great, the Sonic the Hold Right game. What's going on?
I've never investigated or heard someone testify like it gave them motion sickness, so maybe they balanced it just right. If someone told me that, I would believe them. It is another one of those things where I have just done them dozens of times, and so I kind of finally have like a handle on the controls. I will say, and I think I said this back when we talked about Origins and as a compilation, they feel so much better at a full 60 frames per second frame rate, smoothed out some of those transitions in Origins. It's also the only time I've noticed that the up and down bumpers actually do something. They make the rotation go faster. Or
it did take
slower.
me a long time to learn that, yeah. I was going to say, it's funny that you say that, because I know a few people, it doesn't affect me personally, but a few people have said that the original game doesn't give them motion sickness, but the smooth rotation of the modern version does, so that's interesting.
Yeah, I could see that, because maybe the choppiness helps break it up.
Yeah.
I did go through in my Origins playthrough, like got all the Chaos Emeralds, and even I even like that bonus one that was thrown in there for the that version of the game. As far as like my rankings, again, like acknowledging that games came after this, I think it is like my pretty low on the bottom as far as my special stages, maybe above the the 3D Mega Drive version stages, which is just, well, they're barely there.
I've always had a bit of a contrary view to these. Like most people tend to consider them mid to low as far as special stages go. I've always liked, though, that they're the only special stages in the series, more or less, that actually use like the base game mechanic rather than being an unrelated minigame. I kind of like the idea of taking the normal gameplay and putting you in this really weird level, basically, and making the challenge and the difference come from that sense. But obviously, that doesn't automatically mean it's going to be fun for everyone. So, but it's an idea I'd like to see them explore again one day, maybe. I don't know.
I think the one thing we can all agree on is that those little goal things, they're the biggest lie in the whole game.
Yes. I always wondered that in I guess they show up in Sonic 3, that casino bonus stage. I always wondered, I mean, what should they say in general? Like maybe danger, or because goal sounds too positive, because what they are is you goofed, no prize for you.
Exit, maybe, like.
Or just end.
I feel like it must come from like that. At the time, bonus levels were like a thing in almost every game, and getting the thing that you get for doing the bonus levels wasn't always the goal. Sometimes just like beating them was good enough. So I guess it's a weird thing where they just did that because that's what you always do, but they didn't think it through.
If you think about it from like a lore perspective, maybe it's like, oh no, go out here to escape. Don't go into this area. No, don't go and get the Chaos Emeralds. They're secret. No.
Well, wasn't there that thing in the Sonic Bible as well about how they're like Dr. Robotnik's Maze of Confusion or something? So
the Warps of Confusion, like he set up himself in space originally.
So I think we know who wrote Goal on the blocks that kill you.
Hey Sonic, go over here. Yeah, this is where you're supposed to go. Haha, idiot.
If it doesn't exist, I would like to possibly create a mod for one of the versions of Sonic 1 to where you take the sound clip of Takanobu Mitsuyoshi from Sonic Mania, and when you hit those, it just says "Go!"
I mean, it would go with the spinning effect at the end.
Man, well, no matter how you spin it, these levels are all right.
Yep. Oh boy. Hey, but we can't forget about at the end of Green Hill Act 3, we get our first Dr. Eggman boss. And speaking of things that also have made a comeback in recent years, this big old dangly chain.
Starting off simple, just big old ball to smash things.
It's funny though, because the Origins version is actually kind of harder from where they made it widescreen.
Yeah, and you can't hit him like as he's coming down too.
Yeah, you can't cheese it, which I understand both sides of the argument.
Yeah,
I remember seeing people that were absolutely furious that they could no longer cheese that boss, and I get it. I do. Get
I mean, you
it,
get more game by not letting you hit him at the beginning. So.
But yes, you get to actually develop your white knuckle precision jumping, as you can jump through the chain, avoid the ball, and get it all in real quick like. But was it Sonic 4 that had this one, and then he on like the last two hits he starts overhand flinging the ball at you? Okay,
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We don't have a ton of nice things to say about Sonic 4, but when that happened, I remember, doing a whoa.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
That was a pretty cool one.
Even though I think, again, to say things that Sonic 2 improves on, I love that the bosses with Dr. Robotnik are modular, like connected to his Eggomatic or his Eggmobile, to where like, the big ball and chain drops out the bottom, and then like going forward, like, oh, and now he's got a little fire shooter like attached to the bottom, and like you are breaking that piece off as the boss so he can flee in the little base car, and it's just really cute. I really love a good 2D Eggman boss.
I'm glad they stuck with that. It's a really, I don't know, it's one of those things that we kind of take for granted, but became really iconic for his character, particularly classic Eggman.
Yeah, even by the time you get to Sonic 3, it's like, oh, these are big giant mechs in their own right, which are still really cool, but I do just kind of miss oh, he's bolting stuff on to his little hover car.
I also like the idea that at least when the game was first being planned, the whole idea is he's using an element of the level against you, so you learn something and now you have to... So originally the checkerboard balls were going to be on Green Hill as something you could ride.
Oh.
So and then Robotnik's got one and he's using it against you, so it kind of fit the level theming a bit more.
Yeah.
And so when you're in Marble Zone, he uses fire, and Starlight he's using he's using the seesaws, and in Labyrinth he's using the terrible level against you. So
he's testing your patience.
I just kind of like that. It's sort of okay, here's the final test for this stage. Robotnik's going to use something from the level against you. Good luck. But that's Green Hill, isn't it?
Yes, I was going to say, once again, speaking of Marble Zone, now this, like we've alluded to, this is kind of I feel like this is the make or break for a lot of people on whether they look back fondly on Sonic 1, because you've got a great introduction to Sonic's speed and his platforming and how you can train yourself to eventually breeze through with lots of rings and get up really high. And then you have a kind of puzzling, jumping lava level where, as you have put in our outline, get ready for lots of lava and waiting on things to cycle. Yeah.
It really is a difficulty spike, and literally in some cases there's a lot of spikes in this level too.
Oh yeah, oh geez, I fall for it every time. I think it's either Act 2 or Act 3, but it's you jump on the little pendulums and you're like, oh, I'm home free, and there's one more set of spikes that pops right out at the end, and I tell you, and you hit it and fall all the way back down and Karn Sarn it, rackin' frackin'.
Rara.
I think there are a couple of, would you call them unfair little traps in Marble Zone that just kind of adds to the whole thing because you are just kind of itching for those Green Hill straightaways, but they decide to make you take a breather here.
They sort of remind you, hey, it's a platformer game. I'm like, I don't want it to be a platformer game, not now. I'm still getting used to it.
I was going to say, the original Mega Drive version, my primary experience of it was playing it over at friends' houses, and all I can say is when I did finally get to play it for myself on Mega Collection, Spring Yard onwards was all new to me. I don't think we ever made it past Marble Zone as a kid.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I did play this, I did try a replay. I was like, oh, I've got an hour, I can probably play through it before we get started. And then I got to Marble Zone, it's like, well, you know what, maybe later.
Act 1 really sets you up for disappointment on Act 2 and 3 as well, because Act 1 you kind of have this really basic structure of you're outside the castle, you go into the castle, and you come out of the castle again. And then Act 2 and 3, you will go in and out several times, and you always think, oh, I'm outside again. The goal's right around here, isn't it? And it just keeps going.
It's just if you that false sense of security is I'm out. No.
But they keep bringing me back in.
Act 3 has multiple entrances for you to take, and you're like, oh, surely one is shorter than the other, and no, it is not. I actually have a similar story about playing Sonic 1. Is my Genesis that I bought came with Sonic 2, but my neighbor at the time right across the street had Sonic 1, and so I think I played it at their house. I think I borrowed it a few times, and I'm being nice to my child self by assuming my memory is not failing me, and that eventually they just let me have it, and I didn't accidentally steal it from them. I'm pretty sure they gifted it to me. But I do also remember, yes, by the time that I owned it, I had made it past Marble. It really did feel like everything was also new, because that can be a stopping point for lots of people. Again, I suppose it is teaching you that there is going to be some precision jumping between platforms in this game, and I do think it feels really good when you get a handle on Sonic's jumping and stopping abilities. I think this carries forward into the other games, but I was just kind of paying attention to the animations, and Sonic does have a little half step. Like when you jump and land, if you don't like reverse the direction on the control stick. And I don't know, just like going through it again, I was like, oh yeah, you can learn to make him stop on a dime or like jump straight up in the air to like cut a little slide short, and it just feels kind of good. Like, you know, Marble Zone can be cheap sometimes, but doing the hopping, especially on those really yes, as Luke is also pointing out, like why even bother putting speed shoes in these non-speedy levels, because they will. It's almost like a trap in of itself. Dude.
It's a shame that I feel like the level design doesn't always communicate this, but once you do really know your way around, there's a lot of those like stop and wait on a lava block kind of thing sections that you can just jump over if you know what you're doing, and it's a shame that they didn't really communicate that much for people who don't know the levels off by heart.
I'm sure they were working with, like, there's only so much we can do to be intuitive with this. You know, they're not going to stop and put a tooltip up on the on this 16-bit game saying like, hey, maybe try skipping over some jumps. But the one that stuck out to me is I believe it's Act 2, but it's one of the, you are riding the block as the lava geysers like propel you up, and if you stay on it, you can actually access a secret area which has a couple of item boxes, and then you come back and you could ride the block back over a little quicker and start all over. But if you jump to that last platform and just get a nice running start, you can just hop over onto that last platform using your speed even in these close quarters.
Speaking of those blocks, by the way, do you ever have a point where you're like, where one of the big blocks comes up ahead of you while you're riding the little one across the lava? And sometimes when Sonic jumps into it, because he's being pushed along, he doesn't activate the proper jump, so he's just sort of like jumping like Mario, as opposed to like doing the spin attack.
Yeah,
I feel like I have seen that. Yeah,
it happened to me.
That
today.
can happen in Sonic 2 as well. It's just like a funny little, I guess, technically a bug, but a harmless one. It is funny to like, yeah, and he's just kind of running in the air.
So I think Marble Zone is, yeah, like you said, it's kind of like the point where, at the stopping point for a lot of people who are like, oh, I had fun with Green Hill, what's next? Oh no. Like I can understand like modern Sonic fans, or even like people who played Sonic like pretty much after this game, will come back to this and just like be like, I don't think this game is for me anymore. And understandable, it's a lot all at once.
It's a shame. They were definitely still like finding their feet with how to design Sonic levels, and I don't know, maybe they just only had enough ideas for like momentum stuff to make the speedier levels in the game. But it's a shame, because I do get the impression, like when I was a kid, that I was never that worried about the fact that we couldn't beat Marble, because I assumed that whatever was coming after would be even harder, and this is just what the rest of the game is like, you know? And that's a shame. That's probably quite a few people's experience with Sonic, and they don't actually know that there is a lot of good stuff still to come in Sonic 1.
I do wonder if this is partly like the Mario inspiration again. Like, okay, we've got to have an underground level. Okay, we've got to have a castle level. Let's slam them together for this one.
Yeah.
Because that's what it makes me think of, is like those two combined.
Just kind of going through the video game design motions of the time.
And that's where Sonic fails, when he tries... Sometimes, okay, that's not true. Sonic does rip off other video games and franchises to great effect sometimes, but sometimes when he's just like wholesale lifting from other games without thinking about it, it leads to stuff like this.
Yeah, this is where I will interject and say, jumping to Sonic 2, that Chemical Plant is such a better second level in the same format of introducing, again, like, some platforming, some stop and waits, even some underwater sections, which are coming up in this game, but also like keeping those straightaways. Like, I mean, even though, you know, the frustrating bits of Chemical Plant you have in your head are that little water section, which you can skip almost altogether if you are quick enough and on that top route, but also that opening straightaway that might be the first time you run off the screen because you're going so fast. And I understand Marble Zone's shortcomings, but I do immediately see that they learned from that going into Sonic 2.
Although I do think there are a lot of people who stopped at Chemical Plant once they got to that one bit with the blocks and the water.
Oh, yeah.
See, I might be a little bit more mean with that one. Like, oh yeah, Marble Zone, it can be frustrating, but that I'm just like, yeah, well, get good. Like, it was hard for me as a kid too, but nah, I made it past there eventually. Come on.
I'm an adult. I pay taxes and I beat chemical plants.
Exactly. Gosh, dang it. But hopefully you made it out of Marble Zone, and as we've said, you beat the boss where Eggman is just kind of pooping out little fireballs on the platforms you can stand on, and made it to the Spring Yard Zone, which I think did we not bring this up when we were going through Sonic CD, that Sonic CD seems to have taken a lot of its level inspirations from Spring Yard Zone specifically.
I feel like a lot of things took from Spring Yard Zone, like Casino Night is pretty much taken from this, or it's the better version of this, to be fair.
Once again.
This is kind of like their first experiment with trying to do more sort of... It isn't exclusive, it isn't specifically pinball-y stuff, because there are none of the little bumpers and things. But it is like, there's a lot of momentum going on the stage, lots of like sharp inclines and stuff where Sonic can do his little rolly motions and things.
Yeah, if you did not have a handle on that, oh, I can build up Sonic speed by just rolling in these pits, then this forces you to learn that.
Yeah.
It's funny. In a lot of ways, it feels like a prototype version of the sort of casino pinball zones that would come. But at the same time, I think it's kind of a shame that it's never really come back in any way, because it has a really like unique aesthetic as far as the series goes. Like, I feel like it's the most 90s looking of every single level in Sonic 1.
Oh, absolutely. Those neon signs and stuff. And
it's a shame.
I don't know what it is about it.
Yeah.
The color scheme, the choice of like the red all around, and it's a nice combination, I think.
I think it's also it's either Act 2 or Act 3, where there's like a lot more bumpers, a lot more red bumpers involved, both with like momentum and then also just like really high bouncing, and like in retrospect, that feels like the beginning of like the legend of red bumpers in Sonic games.
Yeah.
Yep. Like you said, this one doesn't seem to come back much because, again, I hate to say that it is done so much better in other games with your casino levels and your dedicated pinball stages. I do really love all the silly little neon signs. I mean, the most famous one is the cope, which I tried to find the real reason is in there. I found the old post where someone was like, oh, it stands for one of the processors. But I think what people fail to mention is like 4 posts down, they said, oh, I just made that up.
I'm still looking for the sieve and mold signs.
Yes. I think the explanation is just it's an interesting looking English word to have there, because they also have, what is it, CPU and other up there.
My theory was always that it was just like not fully understanding the context for using that word in English, and it's meant to be like a do your best kind of thing, hang in there.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's how I interpret it.
Reached very new context in modern times over the last few years, but
yes, it really has.
The funny version is it's Dr. Eggman with that cope, seethe, mauled hedgehog. I like to look at it as maybe it's the last vestigial evidence of like the residents of who used to live here, and they're trying to put like a hopeful message out there. Like, I guess hope would make more sense in this context, but it's just cute. I love that it's just part of Sonic's history, that the big cope sign.
I really wish one of the bottomless pits, you fall down it and there's a sign that says skill issue.
See, we're coming up with ideas for mods all over the place.
There you go.
Fun fact, this was originally going to be called Sparkling Zone, by the way. Just remembered that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Never knew that.
That would also be perfectly.
Yeah, those old screenshots and footage of like the prototype version was a lot more Casino Night as well. Like, I'm glad they I'm glad they dialed it back, because I don't know, Spring Yard has a kind of subtle beauty to it compared to Casino Night, which would have been a shame to lose.
I do agree. But it's just like if you look at the early versions of Casino Night as well, and it's like, oh, no, please definitely dial that back.
I know, we could probably spend a whole chunk of time on like all of the different prototype versions, like those UFOs in Green Hill Zone and whatnot.
Does it Marble Zone?
Oh, they're in Marble Zone. Yeah, see, there we go.
That's me just being like, how dare you, Jeremy?
We are not prepared to go over that aspect of the the prototypes. I don't know what I'm talking about.
But that was cool, though.
I feel like now's a good time for me to mention that, like, ever since the beginning of this podcast, like the first episode, I've always like seen myself as like the audience insert of like enjoying Sonic, loving Sonic, but not always knowing like all the really intimate, detailed lore and like prototype stuff of all the games, and like especially for this episode, I purposefully like did not look up any like prototype stuff or history of the first game or anything, because I wanted this episode, for me at least, to be like, oh, my friends are telling me cool stuff about the first Sonic game that I didn't know. So like, audience, if you didn't know this stuff, I'm here with you, because I'm just like, I didn't know that. Oh, big balls and like, whoa,
big balls.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we didn't know about, like that came out like with one of the prototypes that got released by Hidden Palace.
Just a few years ago, even.
I always think of that front-facing ball hog. Like that's like, wow, that's like one of those things we never even saw in like the magazines and stuff. Oh, by the way, those Marble Zone UFOs, they're in Wayne's World. That's the wildest stuff. They've got like an early version of Sonic 1 playing in the background of them. Sorry, Wayne's World, the movie, the original movie.
That's awesome.
There they are with the...
Chalk that up to proper preservation. The Eggman boss in Springyard Zone is one of the first really weird ones.
Yeah.
The boss in Springyard kind of reminds me, I think was done... I will say similarly, not better, because it's different gimmicks, but similarly to the one in Aquatic Ruin in Sonic 2, where you are having to use the environment and waiting for Eggman to do a specific thing before you can score a hit, versus like dodging what he's throwing at you and then, hitting him at the same time. I've never let the clock run out to see just how many platforms he can spike down and remove from, for you to stand on. I wonder, does it just get to where there's only one left and you're boned?
I think so.
It does actually, because I remember at least one time I played and I got to that boss, and for some reason I was just borking it the whole time, and and like, yeah, that happened. Like, I got down to one block and then I got stabbed through the entire body.
Well, fair enough. This one actually does throw a wrench in my whole theory of like giving you things from the level that you might have faced before to fight, because this has nothing to do with the rest of Springyard, to be honest. It's just a big bridge that Robotnik's taking out one block at a time.
And still technically using the environment against you, but yeah, not as much as the other ones.
It does feel like Casino Night in Sonic 2 is the boss that should have been here, in the sense that, Springyard's full of those half pipes and using momentum to get up high.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a shame that there aren't more bosses in the classic games in general that make use of momentum like that, or the modern games, or any of the games, but...
Yeah.
Well, does Sonic Advance 2 count where they're all using momentum?
I think
it's just running.
I was going to say, I think a lot of hardcore classic fans would say no, absolutely not, never, not in any way whatsoever.
Especially if you're playing as cream and cheese and you've got that win button there. Following chronologically, we have to drop down into the Labyrinth Zone.
Do we have to?
Help.
I mean, this is another where, it's not the same order, but I feel like Aquatic Ruin is just the better water level. Mostly because if you get really good at Aquatic Ruin in Sonic 2, you don't even have to go in the water that many times versus Labyrinth. And hey, Sonic CD makes this mistake too, by also having a level that follows this exact format of being an underground. Well, it's a labyrinth.
But it's a water level where you can't swim, unlike with Mario, so it's like, well... And that's always a funny thing. Apparently, when they were coming up with this, they're like, oh, well, hedgehogs can't swim, can they? Actually, I think you'll find many videos of hedgehogs swimming. But Sonic just can't. He's got to be nerfed somehow, I suppose.
Yes, he needs a character flaw, and not being able to swim or breathe underwater like Mario is it.
I was going to say, it's interesting because the idea of like having these weird floatier physics and a time limit on how long you can stay underwater in a bubble, pun not intended, those ideas would be like a nice mix-up of gameplay, but they also decided to make it really hard on top of that in terms of the traps and obstacles.
Yes.
It is funny that this level that instills so much terror in Sonic fans for everything it represents starts off with one of the most cheerful songs in the game. Labyrinth, that sounds bad. Oh, but the music sounds good. Oh no, but it's underwater.
Oh, look at those pretty owls. Oh, I drowned. I feel like the biggest thing holding... I mean, it feels like a death of a thousand cuts, that there are just several little annoyances that all add up in Labyrinth. Like, top of the list being those spear spikes that seem to have a hitbox that is way too big.
Yeah.
And the fact that is this where they also introduce the spinny enemies that throw their spikes at you.
Orbinauts, yeah.
Orbinauts, of course.
Or Unis if you want to be a weeb.
It's so obvious that if you didn't have to deal with water physics, it would be so much easier to deal with those guys. And in fact, hey, that's what they did in future games in like Sonic Mania. That it is perfect. The gaps are in between the spike balls are perfect to like land in between, except you're in floaty water physics, so that doesn't work. It's much harder. Yeah, Labyrinth is nobody's favorite, is it?
Gotta say, though, I would not trade its legacy within, like, the fandom culture for anything. Like, I mean, we kind of all come together to hate Labyrinth, if you know what I mean.
It's like a love-hate thing to where, like Marble, like, we are so used to its legacy. And eventually we got it, even if it took us into adulthood or, Mega Collection, whatever, release. Yeah, it is hard to say, like, oh, I would cut it out altogether because, no, it's fun to talk about, like, oh, yeah, this is the low point, huh?
I suppose the great debate would be, would Chemical Plant in Sonic 2 be enough to make the drowning theme famous, even if Labyrinth hadn't happened?
Huh.
Oh,
For some people, maybe. But,
that's a good thought.
But you spend a lot of time with it in that one, and you're always going to be spending time, like... The famous thing is, like, the anxiety incarnate that is the drowning music from Sonic in general. You will hear it a lot, mostly while you're waiting for a bubble to pop out of the ground in Labyrinth. And it's just da-da-da-da-da-da-da, come on, get out. No, it's just a little one. No, give me the big one, here it comes. I'm drowned. Yeah.
I swear there is not to jump ahead, but in Scrap Zone 3, which is just Labyrinth Act 4, there is a specific bubble generator that just refuses to give you that life-saving big bubble, and just me, I guess.
I was going to say, I was recently playing the 8-bit version of Sonic 1, and in that there's like an optional challenge to find all the 1-up monitors, and one of them is down this really long corridor with no bubbles, so you have to get in there, get the 1-up monitor, and get back out again. And when I was waiting at that bubble, literally just nothing was coming out, and I was like, okay, I know what's going to happen here. I'm going to drown, and then the bubble's going to come out just as Sonic's going off the screen. Even after Sonic went off the screen, the bubble still didn't come out, so I don't know how I could possibly have even survived there.
They had it out for you on that, just you specifically in that section. Oh, goodness.
I think, like, all these fan creators are really great, but they've been getting it wrong when it comes to, like, trying to make a horror game based around Sonic. What you need to do is actually make it based on one of the water levels if you really want to scare people.
I'd pay good money for a VR Sonic game where I'm just underwater in Labyrinth and it's all murky and I have to get from bubble to bubble. That would probably actually be genuinely horrifying.
You can keep your photorealistic bleeding eyes Sonic.exe. Just drop him in a game that's all water levels.
God, that would go well with some backroom stuff as well, wouldn't it? Jeez.
Oh goodness.
Don't even need like monsters lurking or anything. It would just be like, nothing is scarier trope.
I would like to believe that there is a super dramatic, like Dan Drazen-esque fanfic out there that deeply explores like Sonic's psychological fear of water. I would like to see that.
But once you make it out of here, you've managed to avoid drowning.
Good job.
I mean, we already said that. Yeah, there is not even a unique Eggman boss. He's just he's also trying to escape this terrible place.
I like the idea that you've just snuck up on Robotnik before he's ready. He's like, oh wait, no, I was preparing a thing.
Oh shit!
I didn't really think you'd make it through this one.
Just taking pot shots at his butt. Oh, goodness.
Oh man, they made that layout absolutely perfect, where if you do get hit, you go all the way to the bottom.
Oh.
Yeah.
You might as well just give up on that run.
Like when I played on Origins the other day, that happened to me. I got to I think the last set of spikes coming out the side, I got hit, and literally if you get hit by a particular one of them, it is just clear sailing all the way to the bottom. And I was just like, really, Taxman, you couldn't have just snuck in a little block there? Did you have to be completely faithful? Just halfway up, you know?
Yes. I think that was one specifically where I cheesed it with the, hey, I'm going to add that extra emerald in there and do Supersonic and his long, fast jumps to just completely cheese that section.
I will say that the boss of Labyrinth Zone was a bit more palatable on the Sonic Origins version because of the fact that if you played the anniversary mode, you just get the continual retries. You don't have game overs and stuff, but it also prolongs the suffering.
Yeah, true. You have to make the conscious decision to give up. You don't get the sweet release of a game over.
Yes, there's a couple times where I retried a few times. I'm like, okay, I'm done. I probably rebooted the game 3 times just because of that stupid boss.
Even the boss in the Sonic CD equivalent is a little bit more fun because you can, if you get the line it up just right, jump and fall down onto Eggman and get a couple of hits in, usually to put you over the top there. But he's going up in Labyrinth, so that is much harder to do.
I don't think I've ever actually managed to beat him though. I've outrun the water once or twice, but never got the 8 hits in. I think that's a badge of honor only a few fans have.
Yeah.
See, they should have made that one of the achievements on Origins.
No, they shouldn't have.
All these baby achievements play as Sonic, play as Knuckles.
Or at least have, I kind of understand the logic of achievements. I don't know if you've ever gone and looked at, the percentages on most. Lots of people don't even, complete the base game on just games in general. But I would appreciate it if there was a little, maybe separate in-game rewards and achievements. I think Origins even has those, in the mission mode. Or, yeah, they could have made it a mission, an optional hard mission to do stuff like that. I know there's a couple of those in there that's recreate famous old glitches. But your reward for making it out of this labyrinth is this nice, pretty city, Starlight Zone.
Sorry, I thought you were going to say the reward for making out a labyrinth is you don't have to play Labyrinth anymore.
I mean, yes,
for a while,
goes without
anyway.
saying, I would hope.
I quite like this level actually.
Yeah.
I think it's a breath of fresh, literally a breath of fresh air after Labyrinth Zone and some of these harder levels to just be out in the city again.
I think this is the first time and maybe I'm just making this connection in my head, but thematically that Starlight and then Scrap Brain right after it might actually be the same city, and Scrap Brain is just what Eggman has taken over and built up upon.
That could make sense.
I really appreciate the way that Starlight Zone Acts 1 through 3 is just designed in general, because at least for the way that I played it, I feel like it's a really good balance between the more precise platforming and some more technical just level design work in general, but I also still get that sense of speed. I feel like there's a really satisfying balance of both of those concepts throughout all 3 acts of the entire zone. And it was especially getting out of, and maybe it was just the high of getting out of Labyrinth Zone, but especially leaving there and then going to this, it feels like a really good set of levels, and that's a reward in and of itself.
Yeah, and I just think it's a great, looking at it from an aesthetic and musical standpoint, it's just a nice feeling level.
It really is.
There's going to be some dangerous stuff to deal with. You've got all the this is the first one where you have to deal with bombs, which are literally badniks called bombs because all they do is they explode when you come near them.
Yes, you
aside from
cannot
that,
take them out in any other way.
Yeah, not even if you're invincible, you can't do anything to them. But I think it's weirdly, like, we've had some of the more stressful levels before this, and then we're getting, it's the nice little city level where it seems like a nice little residential area, especially as you go down further and you start seeing the brick walls and stuff, and I don't know, I just really like it.
It is nice that they kind of, even though Sonic 1 is notorious for having all these really slow levels, they do at least make them back-to-back, fast level, slow level, fast level, slow level, and it does, like, keep your spirits slightly high when you are making it through the whole game.
I think it's even Act 3 of Starlight that has maybe like the largest hill in the game that kind of launches you up onto the little seesaws with the spikes, and it just feels really good. It's nice to have after slower levels sandwiched in between Spring Yard, to have like one that it seems much more balanced towards your speed again.
I think it's no wonder that I think it's in Sonic Jam and also some of the M2 releases that you can play a mode which is literally just Green Hill, Spring Yard, Starlight, and that's the whole game. Which is like, here's Sonic 1, but just the good bits.
Yes, you're those easy modes that trim out like entire acts and sometimes entire levels, and that is cool. Like again, that is just an option that they kind of realized after the fact. Might be more palatable to if you bounced off the full version.
Of course, us real fans, we earn our right to play around in Starlight Zone.
Yeah, of course.
We have the boss of Starlight Zone, which, like Chris mentioned, like brings back the whole bomb thing.
Well, in this case, it's like they've turned like the little spike balls that you're using on the seesaws into bombs, and Robotnik gives you ammunition to hit him with, which I quite like.
Yeah.
This again, maybe I'm being silly in my own brain, but I couldn't help but think with some of these bosses, and especially the final boss, that Eggman's problem isn't that he is not a genius. He is. He's obviously very smart. He creates all these things with his brilliant mind in his own two hands. He just needs a QA department. He needs someone to interject and say, like, well, what if Sonic jumped on the other end and sent that spike ball right back up, that just never crosses his mind that Sonic would be able to outsmart him in that way.
I was going to say, you say this, but he does get that QA department in modern games, and he does not listen to them.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. We have even seen in the latest Sonic Frontiers when Sage is like, I think the easiest thing would just be to team up with Sonic. And he, again, refuses to listen for the majority of that game.
Part of me does assume, like, maybe he's giving Sonic a fighting chance. Because this is a thing that the Robotnik likes to do, like, almost to taunt Sonic. You remember Sonic Adventure and the Egg Viper boss, and see if you can make it through here, Sonic! And Sonic does. He's like, oh, shit!
I do think it's very in character for classic Eggman in particular, especially when you consider like his characterization in the limited animation of the day and like the modern shorts by Tyson Hess. He wants to kill Sonic, but he also wants to have a good time while he's doing it.
Oh yes, this is a man who is like literally dressed like a magician with a little cape. Like if it's not flashy, it's not worth doing. And if he's got to break a few OSHA rules to get to that state, then he's gonna do it.
Or maybe when it comes down to it, they just needed to give you a boss that you can actually beat.
Right.
It's like, why would Bowser have that axe in the back that would destroys the bridge that he's standing on? Because you need to have a goal.
Yeah. Well, then we're getting back into creepypasta territory to where I'm like, oh no, I'm trapped in an unbeatable boss. That's not fair. Nightmare.
Just to be a boring nerd and talk about gameplay again, though, I do really like that this boss has like multiple ways to hit him. That's again one of those really nice little things that should really come up more often, but doesn't.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I wanted to say that too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can either hit him with the spike balls or you can hit him with the spike ball, which is.
Oh, I haven't checked to see. Again, going to Sonic 2. I know Sonic 2 is. Even sometimes encourages you to like hit Eggman just right to score multiple hits. I can't remember if that might be a little more difficult in Sonic 1 as far as not like falling right through him after a hit or bouncing.
I feel like you do in Sonic 1, but
I think on this boss specifically, I got lucky enough to get 2 hits on him one time, and then I just had to deal with single hits for the rest of the time. But at the same time, I'm also not a pro Sonic player, so that's just me.
I do know, and we will talk about this in a bit. We've already mentioned I did play through some of the 8-bit version, which is incredibly charming, even if I didn't grow up with it, and know that you cannot do that because you have no rings on all those bosses, and you will just fall through and take a hit. But that's just different designs, not necessarily a flaw. Oh boy, Scrap Brain Zone. Things are getting real scary.
When I was playing this one again, I remember years ago when I first played it, it was definitely a difficult set of levels, and by the end of it, I think I was just very tired of it. Going back and playing it now, I actually, like, there were some spots where I was able to really actually enjoy the levels, because it had, I think maybe because I was trying to play it differently than I used to, I actually found some places where I could, you know, quote unquote, hold right to get some speed going. And I think because of just the versatility of the Sonic levels in general, where you have like different layers of the level that give you different traversal options, I must have gotten into some of those lucky patterns where I was able to like do some of the more speedy stuff instead of having to like do the waiting and platforming things. Yeah, I think I got lucky this time.
I do think of like the 3 slow hard levels in the game, Scrap Brain is probably the one that manages to get the balance almost right, at least, if not right, in terms of balancing that kind of thing. Like, I don't know what it is, even though I like categorize it with Marble and Labyrinth in my head as the hard ones. I do think it's a lot more enjoyable to play, and I can't quite put my finger on why, but I think it might just be exactly what Jake said.
Yeah, there's not as much waiting around, I think, like compared to Marble Zone, which makes you wait around for like blocks and weights and stuff, and Labyrinth, which makes you wait for water and air bubbles and stuff. But this one, like, it's definitely a level made to make you suffer, but in a different way to the other ones.
I might even go as far to say that, unlike the rest of the game, I might prefer Scrap Brain to Metropolis from Sonic 2.
Yeah.
Because Scrap Brain has a lot of... I feel like this is really putting all of your Sonic platforming that you have learned playing the rest of this game to the test, because there's those little spinny platforms where the timing is very precise. There's the disappearing, reappearing, you know, your Mega Man platforms that do allow you, if you get it just right, like you can stay on that high area, and you don't have a lot of opportunities to run real fast, but you can skip a lot of the more frustrating parts. Whereas what I recall of Metropolis is those being, even in modern releases, like some of the levels that like the timer threatens to run out to hit that dreaded 10-minute mark and kill me. And yeah, I think Scrap Brain is doing it on this last run again. Aside from Act 3, which is just Labyrinth again and sucks, I felt really accomplished, like hitting the big spinny they look like big bristles to me, the big gears that you can launch your way up to. Like, every time I manage to do that and get on that upper pathway, it feels really good in Scrap Brain. And on the same time, like when you beef it and fall all the way back down to the bottom, and then you're in very unfamiliar territory, like it still feels like pretty good, because you're like, well, I guess that was my fault. It wasn't like a hidden spike thing like the other levels.
I think one of the things that also, like, that makes this an improvement over... I say an improvement over Metropolis, like it didn't come first, but certainly makes it superior to it in some ways, is the fact that there's variety. Like, this is one of the first Sonic levels with, like, level transitions in a way, or certainly, like, a change in acts. Because the first act is, like, outside, and then outside the factory, and then you're inside it for the second one, and I think that adds, it changes things up a little bit,
yeah,
at least
definitely.
Visually.
Yeah.
And if I can say something positive about Act 3, I do like how I saw someone point this out, and I just, I choose to fill in the fiction gaps. Eggman has built this factory, I like to think on the outskirts of Starlight Zone and on top of an inaccessible until you're dropped into it part of Labyrinth Zone. and it's like just sucking the life out of and poisoning this part of Labyrinth Zone because the background is now, instead of the nice like golden sheen, it's like bleached bone white, and the water has been polluted to that proto-chemical plant pink purple. And I do at least like the theming there, the theatrics of it, that like, oh no, this is what awaits the rest of the island if we don't stop Eggman here.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Even if they are just recycling assets from Labyrinth Zone, at least they made it interesting.
I would love to know the development cycle. Like, was that their idea from the beginning, or did they specifically say, hey, how can we make a really intimidating last level? And that was a direct response to playtesters playing Labyrinth Zone. I'd love to know.
I hate this Labyrinth Zone level. Ooh, you hate it, do you? Let's bring it back.
If it was their plan from the beginning, amazing usage of player psychology there.
Oh, they knew people were going to have a terrible time with that. By the way, just to continue what I was doing before with Springyard Zone, this was originally going to be called Clockwork Zone. That's two separate words. But on all the screenshots that show it as that, they haven't made the W yet, so it's Clock Orc Zone.
I think I may have stumbled across that bit of trivia, and I'm sure that wasn't the exact reason, but yeah, did someone say, like, so they changed it because they didn't have a W? I just thought that was so funny. Like, they were just incapable of creating one.
Ran out of time, they didn't have a W, they didn't have a third act.
Yeah, I was going to say, those bits didn't come cheap back in those days. Maybe they really, I don't know, they were like, sorry guys, it's either the Sega chant or the W, which do you want?
Yeah.
We only have enough budget for either one.
We've already taken the band out, we can't take any more.
And they're like, but what about the M? Can't you turn that down, upside down? Nope, no space. Oh, darn it.
You're crazy, you're fired, get out of here.
That kind of, and once you literally spring out of the third act, there's no boss here. Basically, the last zone, quote unquote, it's the last part of Scrap Brain Zone, which is Final Zone, and this is the final boss, fittingly enough.
Yeah,
and it's hard.
I like the theming of like 3 just regular acts without a boss zone, and then you go into like the final boss. Like that seems just cool to me. I like it.
I do, even though the level is very hard, I do like how it kind of catches you out of nowhere in Sonic 2, where, what? Metropolis has 3 acts? Oh no! We've only been doing 2 the whole game. And yes, as Luke is pointing out, the spin dash makes the final boss a lot easier, especially to avoid those little lasers.
So
I think
easier.
The best strategy is to go to one side, and right before the lasers start to home in on you, just let go of that spin dash and you are safely on the other side. And then it just becomes a waiting game to be on the same side, so you can bop Eggman in one of those piston hammers trying to squish you into a little blue paste.
Piston what?
It's a nicely threatening final boss, but again, it's a shame they don't really use the game mechanics for it.
I do really like just thinking about how bombastic and even on the Genesis or the Mega Drive's like limited sound chip like properly conveys like it's a big stomping band full of horns for this final boss. And yeah, I mean, I hope it goes without saying that, Masato Nakamura's music in Sonic 1 is still great, still very listenable, still iconic.
Yeah, I definitely think the final boss has particularly good music above all else. I like that it's sort of a pseudo remix of the regular boss theme.
Mm-hmm.
It's again, well, I mean, I know the reason why it hasn't come back. It's because of music rights related things. But
yes.
Again, it's a shame that the Sonic 1 boss music doesn't really come up much. Although I guess it did get sort of a slight remix treatment in. Yeah, we did get a little bit of remix of that kind of thing from T-Lopes in the Sonic Origins cutscenes, which was nice. But yeah, generally those themes for Eggman have never really come back. But again, it's one of those weird things where like it's easy to forget that this was once the only music associated with him, but I feel like other themes have kind of taken over the years. But
It's because of the whole rights issues, and I feel like that's always, for a while, it felt like that was something we were never going to get back as the original Sonic music because of the whole situation with Dreams Come True and everything. And that was always a shame to me because, like, you know, it'd be like if we lost the Mario theme, you know? Because that was it for the longest time. But then again, the cartoons are coming out now, making up their own versions anyway, so it's kind of been it's been quite diluted over the years.
It sure seems like these days that it's more of a Sega just has to, like, nicely ask him, like, hey, can we use this music? And, you know, I won't claim to know all the details. It does seem to be and it's hard for me not to say, like, well, good for him that, like, he nailed down, like, oh no, like, this is my music, like, it is Sonic, but I am the creator, and you know, it seems to work out fine when it needs to. Like, you know, as much as I wish there was more Sonic music in the live action Sonic movies, like,
Yes.
Masato's Green Hill shows up in both of those in different forms. It just seems like it's a little more complicated to where, you know, the most cynical part of my brain is like, oh, when it doesn't show up, it's like, you know, Sega just didn't want to have to cut him a check again or whatever.
I think that happened, like, one time they did a meme. They did a meme using Sonic 1 footage, and they had to put in, like, replacement music. I was like, oh, man. I get it's just something you did on Twitter, but oh, man.
Yeah. Like, they did, you know, they wanted to make a goofy-ass Twitter video and didn't want to have to call all the way over to Japan to get him to sign off on it.
At least one thing, like, there are two things that Sega can lay claim to owning when it comes to the Sonic music, quote unquote, is those jingles. It's the Chaos Emerald theme and the drowning music. They will never lose the drowning music.
True.
Because that was designed by Sega Sound Team. That's why it's still made to return in later games.
Yes, which is also, I mean, you know, Sonic 3 music is also very tricky, but then the tracks that they know are the Sega Sound Team that are still around, like Jun Senoue's and et cetera, those show up too. And again, it's, I don't know, I don't want to make assumptions, but again, yeah, you said the Sega Sound Team, whereas it's they aren't upfront about crediting the individual artists, so maybe that has something to do with it, where they can pretend like, oh yeah, you know, we all made that music. Like, oh yeah, that came up in our Sonic 3D discussion, to where we didn't know who composed the individual tracks until someone, like, ripped it out of the game data, because it doesn't say it in the credits, but that's just a side tangent.
I do think at least having the Sonic 1 and 2 soundtracks being kind of half off limits did cause a lot of more creativity in later Sonic soundtracks, whereas I think, you know, much as we love them, Mario does sometimes slightly overuse the music from the original game. Like, I'd love to hear a new Underground theme one day. So it's kind of nice that Sonic was forced to have, you know, every single game have a unique sound, and Sonic 1 and 2 are no exception to that in the grand scheme of the series.
That's the trade-off, really. As much as the original stuff is iconic, at least you could say, well, Sonic's got more than one theme. And, you know, fair enough.
It is funny that we have had almost 40 years of Mario Underground just being butter.
I do love Koji Kondo.
It's not that it's bad, it's just, it's the same.
Yeah.
That is why I do appreciate, like, you know, I'll enjoy a good remix of it, but I do appreciate the games that have their own thing. And then because I did like that they created some new overworld themes for, like, the new Super Mario Brothers, but then they used them for all the new Super Mario games. So,
yes.
Well, fair enough.
Oh, so much that it came back as a meme going around of the dancing Koopa Troopas. And isn't that just a mark of an iconic quality when it wraps back around to being fun again? But it's so that's Sonic 1. And if you collected all those diddly dang Chaos Emeralds, you get the cute little victory scene from Sonic, and Eggman's all mad in the credits.
And a bunch of flowers grow up. Fun little fact about the little scene where Sonic's running back to Green Hill in the ending. I'm pretty sure I was goofing around because I knew the level select and all the little cheats and stuff. I had like the debug mode on during that bit, and I accidentally turned it on and had Sonic fall through the stage during that bit. And then the screen turned white, and I immediately turned off my Mega Drive. I was like, "Oh God, what have I done?"
You were seconds away from discovering how your copy of Sonic 1 was personalised there.
Yeah.
We keep accidentally creating more creepypastas. Oh man, that debug mode, that was so funny of discovering those cheats as a child and have no idea what that meant. Like I didn't know what a debug mode was or what debugging was, and
where's the bug?
Something that I only associated with Sonic until I understood that, like, oh, I get it. No, you're you're literally trying different things in the game as the developer.
But that's Sonic 1. We made it through. It wasn't easy. That is a difficult game to go back to sometimes. Like, for us, maybe it's not so bad, but it is kind of, I feel like, a hard sell for younger fans who are just like, oh, I want to see how Sonic started. And then immediately like, okay, that's enough of that one.
Yeah, I do. At least we can say that it's harder. At least for me, it's harder to go back to Sonic 1 because like Sonic 2 improved on almost everything of the first one, which is, hey, you know, it's a bountiful harvest of fun games when you can say that, oh yeah, Sonic 1 is only not my favorite because the sequels are so much better in a lot of ways. As Luke points out, the Sonic 1 is more fun with the addition of revisions and added moves and slight tweaks to physics and layouts and whatever, which is, I mean, an interesting discussion on its own. I think we've touched on before that, like, even widescreen makes it a little easier because you can see more of what's ahead of you, and also, like, you know, I would always want the original game to be preserved in some format, but also, like, yeah, I do find it more fun to have the spin dash and like additions modern releases have made.
And it's nice to have a version of the game where it's not as possible for Sonic to die going down one of those chutes in Green Hill Zone because the screen can't catch up in time.
Yeah.
Yes. Hey, again, talking about Sonic 2 improvements where they're like, hey, what if we made that a feature that you can run faster than the screen?
Yeah.
I was going to say, even if Sonic 1's like your favourite and you get bummed out by all the sort of mixed messages most people tend to have for it, I think there's something to be celebrated about how it completely and utterly served its purpose in the grand scheme of the series. Like, it really started everything off in a pretty solid way that was ready to be improved upon, even if you don't agree that it was improved upon. But
yeah, I mean, it changed gaming at the time. Like that, just the game on its own. Like, because it was like in America at least, it was packaged with the console for a while with the Genesis in place of Altered Beast, and I can, you know, like, as much as I'm sure lots of people think back to their Genesis days of being like, rise from your grave. Most people are going to hear the Sega jingle and Sonic, and that's for the best. Yeah, I do have very fond memories of Sonic 1. It was very tough for me. I mentioned on the first episode how I had to call my uncle who knew how to get past that little block puzzle in Marble Zone.
Oh, yeah.
And to be honest, I didn't know what he said. I couldn't hear what he was saying, so I was just like, yeah, thanks, uncle. I don't know what to do.
Wait,
I got it in the
I was going to say,
fine.
you're talking about the one where you just push the block to the right and it lands on the Switch?
Yeah, I literally... But you have to put it to the left. That's what's throwing me off. Yeah, that's how bad of a gamer I was. But I got it in the end. I just maybe abused the level select a lot because you would, wouldn't you?
Even now, with his troubles, I'll never forget Yuji Naka's birthday because that's the level select in Sonic 2.
And for me, whenever I'm loading up the game on the title screen, it's like up, down, left, right, A and start together. That's what I'll teach myself.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've talked about Sonic 1 as a whole, and we have alluded to some of the other versions. I did not know that.
Oh, I mean, Naka's birthday's not there in the Sonic 2 Origins version? Disgusting.
They use his court date instead.
Well, I mean, I suppose they're just trying to get them move far away from Yuji Naka these days.
It's the, oh wow, really? They just straight up changed it. Okay, well, maybe you're right about that.
Maybe,
Oh, I did not know that.
I wonder if they got a tip off about Naka's antics.
Yeah.
Inside trade this mother.
Oh boy. Well, trying to transition into talking about 8-bit Sonic, which I did not grow up with, but is incredibly adorable, is really nice playing. Like, we did a whole episode on these and the fan remakes, which are also still very good. But I went back to I have a I couldn't get my real hardware Genesis to boot up, and so I hooked back up my Genesis Mini, which is still modded and has, in addition to the Mega Drive games, 32X, CD, and Master System games with a couple of Game Gear ones. And so I played through some of 8-bit Sonic 1, and it's just a lovely little game that I can't believe is as good as it is.
Yeah, it may be an ancient game, but I still think it's good. Anyway, that, by the way, Ancient was apparently a studio that was founded by the main composer for this game, Yuzo Koshiro, who we talked about before, the Streets of Rage composer. Man, like, while he's using like some Nakamura tracks in this, lots of really original songs for this, which we've talked about before. I'm going to talk about it again. They're really, really good, and people should talk about them more.
Oh yeah, it's less than 30 seconds, but Bridge Zone, something about Bridge, it just touches the emotions of my heart, and I have to fight back tears. Even again, want to make it clear, did not grow up with this game. Don't know when I would have first heard the Bridge music, but yes, especially again, just to reiterate, like when the few notes of that were in the Sonic anniversary symphony concert, I about like fell on the floor just sobbing.
Yeah, genuinely didn't expect it to show up.
It's so beautiful.
I feel like you've got a lot to say about this game, Jez.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it brief, considering you guys already did an episode on it. Yeah, this is...
No, go for it.
This is the Sonic one that I grew up with, because I didn't have a Mega Drive, and because I was a stupid idiot child, I thought that, just like Mario, all of the 8-bit Sonic games must have come first, and then they made the 16-bit ones, and they just went back to Sonic 1 for some reason. So I always thought that this was the original version of Sonic, and was just like, there's no loops in this, that's kind of weird, but whatever. But yeah, it is much more of a straightforward platformer, but I just have a lot of nostalgic attachment for this game. I definitely prefer the soundtrack for this one, but I always feel like the 8-bit soundtrack has a touch more of like melancholy to it. Like Bridge particularly brings that across, and the 8-bit version of Scrap Brain as well.
Scrap Brain in particular, yeah.
Not the boss theme. The boss theme is probably one of the most jolly tracks in the entire series. But yeah, I'm a big fan of this game. It's definitely not the game. I definitely respect the Mega Drive version more because, Sonic 1 for the Master System and Game Gear doesn't have any of the physics play stuff, which is what's really defined Sonic over the years. But it's just a really fun little solid, kind of straightforward, slightly speedy platformer. And it's definitely one that I go back to a lot. So yeah.
Yeah, I know. I saw you just recently playing it again on the Apricot Cookie server. I saw you posting your score at the end of the game. I was
that's the thing.
Jez up to their usual shenanigans.
Even though I played it tons as a kid, and it was the one that I had. It wasn't my first Sonic game. My first Sonic game was Sonic 2, and then I got Sonic 1 for the Master System. So it was kind of weird in the sense that it was kind of like getting a level pack for Sonic 2, because they do play very similar on the Master System version, but with less physics stuff, which was kind of weird. But yeah, it has this weird scoring system where it keeps track of how many special stages you've done and whether you found the single 1-up monitor hidden on each level and that kind of thing, and it gives you a massive score bonus at the end. So it's a rare Sonic game where, for the classic games at least, there's more to 100%ing the game than just getting all the Chaos Emeralds, which is nice. So I was plugging away at that recently and finally achieved it without save states the other day.
Interesting.
Nice.
Kind of goes by like Donkey Kong Country rules, where there's like a bunch more stuff than just beating the game.
Yeah, like it'd be nice to. I don't know how well it would work in a proper classic Sonic game where you've got these huge labyrinthine levels with like multiple routes and all sorts of layers, because the 8-bit games are much simpler in that regard. You can have like a single collectible to find on each level and have it be a reasonable challenge, but
it does take, if you're visiting them for the same time, even if you do choose to like go to the fan remakes, which are very nice, but I think, as we said, especially Sonic 2 are their own beasts. So I would recommend, like, at the very least, just finding a nice emulated version of the originals. It takes some changing your brain to understand that this is just a different version of Sonic on a different system, and things like every boss is a challenge because they drop you in there with, I believe so, like no rings. Like that's part of the challenge is bosses. You're one hit and you're done. But there's just something about them to where I just appreciate how they managed to make Sonic work on the last generation of system. After, 16-bit Sonic was supposed to be this, we are revolutionizing the games industry with this, but still managing to make that fit properly on that older hardware. And it's so charming and adorable.
Yeah.
And, Sonic 2 is the one where if you get the bad ending, Tails dies.
I was going to say, I think charming and adorable are really good words for them. I would liken it to like Sonic 1 for the Mega Drive is like an amazing day out on a Saturday afternoon with your friends. Sonic 1 for the Master System is like a quiet little walk on a Sunday afternoon. It's just kind of relaxing and has a much gentler atmosphere. I'd say not even that fitting for Sonic as far as how the series would evolve from that point, but it was their first time making a spin-off Sonic game, so...
And they had to make something for all the Brits with their Master Systems that hadn't got a Mega Drive yet.
Yes.
So everyone who had been playing like Mickey Mouse Castle of Illusion or whatever, or World of Illusion, whatever it was on the Master System, had finally had their own Sonic to play. So something for us, something for the Brits who couldn't afford the new console, and also for all those Brazilians who are probably still playing them.
I was going to say, those die-hard Master System Brazilians. Well, I think that is probably the biggest alternate version of Sonic 1. But before we got a Sonic Origins, which, whether people like it or not, is probably now seen as the definitive version. I'll put it that way. We did get other ports of this, and we covered a lot of those in our compilations, but I mean, just for shits and giggles, we gotta talk about like the good, the bad, and the ugly, starting with the bad and the ugly being that Game Boy Advance port in 2006.
They already did all right with the advanced games. They're like, well, what if we just do the first one again for Sonic's anniversary? That'll be special. And boy, howdy.
Yeah, and that's one of those where even a future developer on Sonic Mania and Sonic Origins Stealth went in and fixed that version, and wouldn't say it's perfect, but it's a hell of a lot better than what they tried to sell, get you to pay money for your Game Boy Advance. Oh boy. That was, I'll just say it wasn't a good year for Sega and Sonic Team, that 2006.
What is it about that cursed year?
Oh boy. We will. I would love a eventual, and unfortunately stuff like this that just might not happen, but just a tell-all behind the scenes where, it's so far gone that nobody's going to get in trouble, but just talk about how rancid it must have been to be on the bottom rung working on those projects.
We're not going to get into too much detail as to why this game is so bad. I feel like it's one of those ones where you can just look at a YouTube playthrough and you'll get it immediately.
At the very least, you could throw it in an emulator and just put hands on it that way. But unless you are the most die-hard Sonic collector, and even then, like, get a Mitten Box copy and just never open it. Put that thing behind sealed glass. It's not worth it. Thankfully, we have gotten so many more faithful and better ports than that. Of course, 2013 is when we got the first Christian Whitehead version, the ultimate realization of his Sonic physics demo, and that has gone forward to be like the basically the definitive version, like we said. I've also got I'm glad we put this on here because I'm remembering when this came out, the 3D Sonic the Hedgehog for the 3DS done by M2, I believe. And they would also go on to do the Genesis Mega Drive Mini version and the Sega Ages version. And those are all incredibly solid versions of, like, you could say probably closer to the original presentation of Sonic 1. And I just like that 3D version because it's you know, it's like Sonic's right there. I could reach in and give him a high five.
I love the 3D function where you can, like, make it look like an old CRT monitor, like it bulges out like one.
Oh yeah,
and everything. It's charming.
It's really cute. It's I remember having that feeling when they announced that for, you know, even back then just a couple dollars, but it was after the you know, after the Taxman version, and I thought, oh geez, what are they doing? Just stick with a winner. And like, no, they can coexist just fine.
I definitely wish it was the Taxman version that we got a 3D version of, because that 3D version, I do think it is still emulated under the hood, so it comes with all like the slowdown of the original during like hectic moments. But it's just so nice to look at. I've always been a fan of like stereoscopic 3D stuff, and just, I mean, the original game was kind of revolutionary at the time for having all of this parallax scrolling stuff, so it just looks right in 3D.
Yeah.
R.I.P. 3DS.
Yeah, it is so interesting. Well, I guess it is, like, again, to date our recording, like the 3DS and Wii U eShops will be going away in mere days. And I am seeing a lot of people, and I think rightly so, because I have pretty good memories of the games that used it correctly, of that stereoscopic 3D just being cool. Like, I totally understand, like, people to where, you know, it killed the battery a little bit more, or you just can't, like, one of those things that it just straight up doesn't work for some people. But man, the games that did it right, like even, you know, 3D Sonic the Hedgehog and like most Nintendo things, the first party Nintendo things that used it really nice.
And it definitely improved in like later versions of the 3DS. Like the difference between like the original 3DS and my 3DS XL that I got is just like, wow, it really is a lot sharper. So
yes. And I think, like, you know, games like Zelda Link Between Worlds will like go up there with just like, oh, this is how to do this correctly. And it's one of those things that, you know, maybe in the future when we get whatever PlayStation 9 holograms working, we'll be able to like properly preserve that, because it's hard to do without the right hardware, that's for sure. Yeah, so Sonic 1, like we said, it can be a little bit hard to go all the way back there. And, you know, I guess unless it was like a compilation like Mega Collections or Origins, I don't know if I would recommend someone to like, oh yeah, just start with Sonic 1. But again, to say like that's only because they took the incredibly solid foundation of Sonic 1 and just built upon that for over the next 2D games. And yeah, I think the again, as Luke has pointed out, Sonic 1's legacy is almost everything that came after that. Like without Sonic 1, like you wouldn't have the competition between you know, the different parts of Sega doing Sonic CD and Sonic 2, which led to those both you know, I would also say solid and amazing games. And it's just it's cool. Like Sonic 1 it's Sonic, man. It's the original.
Like, everything spawned from this in the end. Like, this is like the starting point. Like, it's so important. Like even the stuff which is contentious now all started here. The whole the split between East and West and what the interpretation of Sonic is happened. Like, it all
Classic
every
Sonic, modern
interpretation came from
Sonic.
here. Yeah. All of this is from here. And judging by the games these days, Green Hill will always be around.
in some form, one way or another.
I think Jez said it very eloquently earlier that Sonic 1 really was just like it definitely accomplished what it set out to do, and it became such a fantastic base and foundation for just the rest of Sonic to be able to build off of, because in Sonic 2 we got Tails, and we also got the spin dash, which is such a still amazing mechanic in Sonic games, whether it's like some of the early 3D games or when it's like Sega doing some like older style Sonic games every now and then. Yeah, it really was just such a good foundation to build off of, and it didn't hold any particularly like strict guidelines of like, this is how this has to be, and it didn't confine things to a box where things had to stay the same forever and ever and ever.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you have any final thoughts? Oh, sorry. Yeah, you were about to say something.
Oh, no, I was agreeing with Jake.
Oh, fair enough.
No, yeah, I feel like I sort of accidentally slipped my final thoughts into the not final thoughts earlier on, but yeah, it's a game I just have a lot of respect for. Even if my Sonic 1 was the Master System version, there's no denying that everything that people love about Sonic generally came from this game.
And the only thing is, I would politely, not to be a downer, but would politely just push back on the, like you said, the false recollection I think some people have that, oh, Sonic 1 is the bad one, that isn't as fun as the other ones. And just to say that, like, it is different, and I totally understand the walls that lots of people, especially as children, we were building up our gaming muscles back then, ran up against some of the slower levels, but I would not trade I would not trade a Sonic 1, like I would not excise it from the legacy of Sonic, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, no way at all. In fact, actually, I do slightly prefer Sonic 1 to Sonic 2, which is a bit of a controversial take.
Interesting. All right.
No, it's as simple as I feel like I absolutely get why Sonic 2 is the more popular of the two games, and I would never try to argue someone out of thinking that. I just find, I don't know what it is. I find Sonic 1 slightly chunky platforming more satisfying sometimes than how Sonic 2 tended to be a bit more of a twitchy game. Like, most of the levels in Sonic 2 are just going fast and getting hit by the same burrow bot coming out of the aquatic ruin wall every single time. That sort of thing is why I don't feel like that happened in Sonic 1 as much, and I think that's why I slightly prefer it. I think the two games are really similar in how I rank them, personally, but yeah, Sonic 1 has a slight edge for me, and I'm not sure why. Maybe it's just the fact that Sonic 2 did become such the real blueprint for the series going forward that Sonic 1 has this weird novelty to it that Sonic 2 doesn't have. Sonic 2 is just, this is what Sonic is 100% from start to finish, whereas Sonic 1 is like, this is Sonic, sort of, not quite. And that weird novelty, kind of similar to how some people absolutely love Sonic CD, I don't know, that novelty gives it a slight edge to me.
Just being a bit of a hipster about it, I think. Yeah, totally. That was the one I liked. No, but honestly, like, you're right. Like, Sonic 2 almost is like, you say streamlined, but if you look at like the level design of, say, Emerald Hill versus Green Hill, it's not quite as sprawling. It's definitely one of those levels that really gives you the idea, oh, you can hold right for the most part on this stage. Like, that's the sort of like where the Sonic myth kind of comes from, is those kind of like simple levels. You could say it's down to the split between, like, say, Naoto Oshima and Yuji Naka working on their own different sequels, whereas Sonic CD is a bit of a confusing mess, a bit more like Sonic CD is more like Sonic 1 than Sonic 2 is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, agreed.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't point out the other thing Sonic 1 has going for it is Sonic's shade of blue in his in-game sprite is a lighter periwinkle compared to Sonic 2's harsh cobalt blue. So, maybe that's just like a subconscious, like, a purplier Sonic is a little more friendly looking.
I do think that's another one of those things that gives Sonic 1 that weird, like, slightly, this is slightly off compared to what Sonic would be going forward. It's like, as well, the European box art has that weird sort of pale, very gentle background to it, as opposed to the one most people know with Green Hill. And I don't know, that pale, I've always found that such a gentle looking box art for like the first Sonic the Hedgehog game, you know?
That is interesting. That just goes back to the very interesting history of Sonic being marketed in different territories. It's one of those that's like, well, we know how it is now, where everything's kind of very unified and takes like Sega of Japan's lead. But like, I do wonder, like, an alternate history where those splits never happened, where you had the same Sonic everywhere. But that'd be good for speculation someday.
I mean, my thing with, I didn't replay all of Sonic 1 before this episode, and that was partly due to a lack of time and busyness, but also I have played this game quite a lot. In fact, I played it quite extensively, so I could write an 120,000 word adaptation of it in fanfic form. So I think this game is very important, and while it might not be my favourite Sonic game, I feel like it's so essential to the Sonic experience. Like, we needed it. All warts and all, we needed Sonic 1.
Amen. And that about wraps up another episode of The Hill As Always Greener. As always, you can find us on the internet, on Twitter at Sonic F Series, and on YouTube under that. I have been GameBuddy, and you can find me around the internet under that name, sometimes with a 123 at the end, and you can find me on Twitter at Great Job Jeremy. That's GR and the number 8.
And I have been Faulerro, and you can find me all across the internet as Faulerro. That's Faulerro.
Love that jingle.
It's nice to hear it live.
I have been RockTheJake, and you can find me on all the socials as RockTheJake, and you can find me on twitch.tv as Mr. RockTheJake.
And I've been JezMM, sometimes called JezM by people who don't know how to pronounce it. I can be found on most socials as either JezMM or JezMM Art. My primary content, as the kids say on the internet, is art, and I do a weekly humour comic called Chamomile, which has been going for a few years now. It has nothing to do with Sonic, but you can check it out knowing that it's created by someone who is thinking about Sonic 60 to 70% of the time. So. But yeah, I do a lot of Sonic fan art as well, and sort of pin-up related things. So slight age warning on that, but nothing major.
You should really read Chamomile, as apparently it's pronounced. It's a very great webcomic, very funny, and has lots of lovely ladies in it. So yes, absolutely check it out.
And our silent producer today has been CyberLink420, and you can find him on Twitter at CyberLink420.
Oh, that's true.
Thank you, Jake.
Got a credit, Luke.
As always, a special thanks to Amy Waters for the use of our theme song from the album Gotta Go Slow, and you can always find more of her work on YouTube and Bandcamp. And as always, remember to subscribe and share the show. Those metrics help us get it out there and improve the audience and yada, yada, yada. You know the drill. Thank you very much. All right, our next episode, gosh, I think we're going to stay in the family of Sonic 1 titles and revisit Sonic Advance. The first one.
Yes, we could do the series of games, but that's 3 games and it's a lot of work. So we're just going to focus on the first attempt at bringing Sonic back to 2D after bringing him to 3D. We're talking about Sonic's rocky transition back to 2D.
Yes, I'm looking forward to sitting down and playing that one again, because unfortunately this one is not that whole series of advanced games, like all 5 of them if you count Battle and Pinball Party, have not been re-released as much as the original Sonic one. I hope that changes soon, because
hopefully by the time this episode comes out, maybe Nintendo Switch Online decides, here's Sonic Advance. That'd be
God,
nice.
I hope. I really hope. But my memories of this game, especially the first one, are very, very rosy. So hopefully they remain so as I try and replay through it again and probably get all those diddly dang Chaos Emeralds again. But until then, I'm GameBuddy.
I'm Faulerro.
I'm RockTheJake.
I'm JezMM, and unlike these guys, I'm not a voice actor, so forgive this. You know what they say, the more the merrier.
All right.
Ah, what a classic. This has been The Hill is Always Greener, and we'll see you on the other side.
Woo.
Yeah.